What up everybody, what's good? My name is EK and welcome to What's Good English. It's the end of the month, so I'm back with another TikTok video compilation. I know I have not been the most consistent this month and I apologize for that, but I actually have another video that's going to come out a little bit later on today and I'm editing it right now along with this video, and it is still December 31st, 2021 in the Pacific Northwest, so I still technically have time to make good on that community coast that I mentioned when I was talking about uploading 3 videos this month. So it's still gonna happen. Anyways, I did this video about Cookie Monster that got a ton of views, and most of what you're gonna see in this compilation is going to be stemming from that video, but there are going to be extended versions of some of those videos. So if you don't follow me on social media, then it's going to be all new to you, and if you do follow me on my other socials, especially TikTok, then you're going to see the extended version and maybe some new footage with those. And I also have 3 new videos at the end of this one. If you want to, you can fast forward like 12 minutes after this little intro is done and you'll see the new stuff that I have been working on before I release it anywhere. Thank you to everybody for subscribing and watching my videos and liking and leaving comments. I'm also going to try to interact with you guys a little bit more, so please leave me a comment and ask me questions or whatnot, and I will try to come back at least once a month and respond to all the different comments I get, not just here but on other socials as well. I say that in the other video that I'm editing right now, and I'm done rambling because I got a ton of editing work to do, so enjoy. Ciao. A few of y'all DM'd me this Twitter post over the weekend and made reference to this 2005 study from the University of Massachusetts. In the study, a bunch of children were shown pictures of Cookie Monster, who was sick in bed and not eating cookies, with a picture of Elmo eating cookies standing near him. The children were then asked who is eating cookies, and everyone pointed to Elmo. The children were then asked who be eating cookies, and the white children pointed to Elmo while the black children pointed to Cookie Monster, because even at the ages of 5 and 6, those children recognized that the existential state of Cookie Monster is to be eating cookies. To be bilingual or bidialectal is to have more words, more ways to express yourself, more understanding of certain concepts, and even at the young age of 5 and 6, these kids already got it. To the people that responded that the children didn't really understand the existential state of Cookie Monster, you guys are incorrect. Those children absolutely understood it. If you ask a 6-year-old what a gerund is, they'll probably have no idea what you're talking about, but if you show them a picture of someone running and ask them what that person is doing, they will absolutely respond with a gerund. They absolutely know what a gerund is, they just haven't learned the word for it yet. And by that same token, if you ask about the existential state of Cookie Monster, they're not gonna know, but if you ask them what makes Cookie Monster, all of the children in that study are going to reply with something along the lines of he's blue and he's almost always eating cookies. The difference is the children that were raised on African American English have an extra piece of grammar in which they can express this, and the other children do not. So I'm actually glad y'all commented this because it brings up an interesting discussion, and there's a couple things at work here. First of all, he always gets hungry is kind of sort of equal to he be getting hungry, but it doesn't exactly equal he be getting hungry. You, for example, commented that always can be used in ways where it does not mean all of the time, but that's not really what that word means. Always does in fact mean all of the time. Now, we use that word and we give it some sort of implied weakness every now and then to mean that something happens a lot of the time or most of the time, but not all of the time. The habitual tense, number 1, is something that some of our ancestors were able to express in their own native languages, and they found a way to express that exact same thing in the language that they were forced to speak. It's a piece of grammar that has that nuance and that subtlety built into it. One of the limitations of English is it doesn't have a piece of grammar that has politeness or instability or subtlety built into it, so we have to use a lot of honorifics or flowery words or tone in order to get that subtlety across. The habitual tense exists somewhere between usually and always, but it doesn't actually mean either one of those things. A phrase like he be getting hungry means he be getting hungry, and that brings me to my second point, which is that I'm taking something from one language and using a different, albeit incredibly similar, yet still different language to explain that concept. And whenever you do that, there's something that always gets lost in translation. There's no way that I can possibly explain all the ins and outs of the habitual tense. The only way that you could truly understand it is if you acquired it through use, and use not just meaning that it's coming out of your mouth, use meaning that you're reading it, use meaning that you're listening to it being spoken, use meaning that you're observing what happens when people use it, and then one day it just clicks in your head and you understand what it means. It's something that's a bit difficult to conceptualize if you've never achieved fluency in another language. Elevate the children out of AAVE as if AAVE were some sort of dystopian condition that the kids need to be rescued from? And season my language so that I can be treated like a human being. Yo, why would I, or anyone for that matter, want to stop using a more nuanced version of their dialect that allows for deeper levels of expression? I mean, if you want to teach me a different, less seasoned version of the dialect that I can use with a greater number of people, that's cool, but most of us already got that. You ain't never heard our phone voices? I don't know how many times I gotta keep saying this, but there's no such thing as the proper way to say something in any language. There are non-standard versions of every language in existence all over the world, and they are all valid. Usually the negativity directed at non-standard versions of languages comes from a place of classism, but with AAVE, it's racism, and we know it's racism because when kids that look like this use it, it's something that's improper and shouldn't be used, but when they look like this, all of a sudden people want to give them credit for making a brand new language. It's very much giving Christopher Columbus, so miss me with that racist, and yes, I'm calling it what it is because that's what it is, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat it for your feelings. Miss me with that racist rhetoric. You responded to me reporting on an academic study about children's ability to understand AAVE with ignorant comment after ignorant comment after ignorant comment. And if you just want to disagree, that's completely fine. Dissenting opinions are welcome, but you went into the comments with just a bunch of nonsense. Have you even read a single academic study or book about African American English? Can you even name one source that agrees with anything that you've put in the comments within the last 24 hours? Let's talk about this comment. You were told that to be equal to white people, you have to be twice as good. So why not just speak two dialects then? Every week I get on this app and I switch between two dialects of English and Spanish, occasionally Mandarin Chinese, and eventually the language I started learning last week, and I do all of that code switching exactly when and how I choose to do it. Does that make me some sort of buffoon teaching people slave talk? Modern African American English, or AAVE, or Ebonics, or Black English, or whatever you want to call it, became more distinct from standard English after slavery because black people were finally allowed the opportunity to just be themselves and mind their own black business, creating black cities and towns, creating black entertainment, creating black newspapers and magazines, and just being black by themselves. And to say that it makes you sound like a slave is throwing all of that black beauty and brilliance from the 20th century into the trash. You do not have to be white to serve the agents of white supremacy, and from where I'm standing, you are the one that sounds like a slave. Alright family, first and foremost, I just want to apologize for allowing the dialogue between me and this individual to continue for so long. Y'all deserve a lot better content than this, and this is going to be the last time that I make a video addressing any of the ridiculousness that he has to say. And the only reason I'm even doing it now is because there's at least some opportunity to educate people here, so let's get into it. First of all, citation needed. There were indeed anti-literacy laws, and you could be punished for being black or teaching someone black how to read, but as far as I'm aware of, there were no laws against sounding educated. This is false. There are links, and in some cases, complete literary translations from West African languages present in AAVE. However, the A is there to represent the politically correct term African American. Our language has had many different names, starting with Negro English, which is what it was referred to before it was named Ebonics in 1973. This statement shows that you have no idea how languages are acquired. African American English was made here in America. People who speak it at a native level, including non-black people and immigrants, grew up in a community where the language was spoken. The crux of the argument that you continue to try to make in your comment tirade is that children perform badly on the standardized reading test, but you make that as if there isn't already a wealth of information that shows that standardized testing is biased along racial and socioeconomic lines. They're actually a better gauge for who is middle class and who is actually intelligent. Even the creator of IQ tests, which gave birth to all standardized testing that we have today, said that they could not accurately measure intelligence. So you would rather fight a symptom rather than the disease. You know, it used to say in medical textbooks that black people felt no pain or significantly less pain than white people. So applying your logic, you would rather us change our genetic makeup to match the ideal set by some racist doctors centuries ago rather than correct those textbooks with the actual truth. You would rather us renounce the language that we created, which is quite odd because you don't see the Japanese renouncing all the different dialects of spoken Japanese in Japan. You don't see the Italians renouncing all the different languages spoken in Italy, and you don't see Norwegians renouncing all the different dialects that are spoken in Norway. You would rather us, the black people of the United States and Jamaica, because I also saw that comment as well, renounce the language that we created, while everyone else around the entire world gets to be proud of their language. For all the chest thumping that you're doing in the comments about how black you are sounding mighty anti-black. You would rather us destroy our culture in an attempt to appease people that are still holding these racist ideologies around language that would never see you as equal in the first place. Are you sure the Nation of Islam is going to co-sign on that with you? By the way, you keep trying to push a narrative that it's this generation which is trying to legitimize the way that we speak. That is grossly inaccurate. This has been around since at least the 70s. The difference is this generation is not going to swallow the lies that you did. This generation isn't trying to work twice as hard to be seen as equal. This generation wants the freedom to be just as mediocre as everyone else is and treated equally for that. In closing, I just want to say one more thing. If I already knew how to throw a football, but to make money and be taken seriously, I needed to learn how to throw a baseball, I would use what I know of throwing a football to learn how to throw a baseball, and then I would be good at two skills. What I would not do is burn down every football field in existence so that no one could ever play football again. It's no secret that standardized testing is biased along racial and socioeconomic lines. It has roots in racism as well as eugenics, and even the creator of IQ testing, which gave birth to all forms of modern standardized testing, condemned their usage in this manner and said that they could not accurately measure intelligence. But this video isn't about any of that. This video is about one very specific IQ test from the early 1970s that was written by Dr. Robert Williams, who you might recognize from one of my earlier videos as the man who came up with the term ebonics. While growing up, Dr. Williams, like many black children both then and now, used to score badly on IQ testing, landing somewhere in the 80s, which is below the 100 points necessary to be considered someone of average intelligence. After becoming a professor of psychology at Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri, where he would later go on to become the first black person to ever receive a PhD in that field of study from that university, he began to question how fair these IQ tests were. He devised an IQ test of his own, replacing the Eurocentric vocabulary with words and phrases that were more common amongst black communities. He administered the test to 200 St. Louis high school students, 100 black and 100 white. The 100 black students far outperformed the abysmally performing white students. He, however, did not draw the same conclusion as several of the racist counterparts that were in the field at the time, and said that the performance of the white students did not indicate that they were somehow less intelligent. By the way, it is impossible to do a video on this test without mentioning what he named it. He called it the Black Intelligence Test for Cultural Homogeneity. Why do black people call light-skinned black people red or red bone? That probably has a lot to do with the word pupa from the language of Yoruba, which is spoken in southwestern Nigeria, Benin, and Togo. Yoruba is a tonal language, and if you know anything about tonal languages, you know that they are full of homonyms. So while pupa refers to someone who is fair-skinned, it also means the color red. African American English is full of transliterations just like that one from across the diaspora of African languages, and those little bits help those of us who speak it maintain the link between us and our ancestors. What's good, everybody? So first of all, credit where credit is due. This is the account of the linguist that taught me about the link between red with African American English and Yoruba. Hopefully I said it right that time. If I didn't, sorry, I'll get it one of these days. He isn't on TikTok. He doesn't make content, but he should. He's a lot more knowledgeable than I am. But we had a really cool conversation. And before I get too far, I also want to say that is pretty much proven, not just with Yoruba. I think there were like 6 or 7 different languages that people commented where they also said that the word that they use for light-skinned people is also the same word for red. So it's definitely something that came from Africa that is present in our English, which is really cool. That is the best thing that came out of that video, at least for me, is just seeing that link is so present with our English and the English of our ancestors. One of the other things that he said about Yoruba, again, probably pronouncing it wrong, is that when we insult each other with big head, my uncle, for example, would always use big head as like an insult or something like that. What you doing over there, big hair boy? Like, come here, big hair boy, what you think you doing? Stuff like that. Chewing up road is another one that he mentioned that has been transliterated into African American English. In Yoruba, I believe he was saying that it's used to describe someone that has traveled a long distance. In African American English, it's not really used all that much anymore. It's really like older people that kind of still know it. So maybe talk to your parents or your grandparents or your great grandparents and see if they remember the phrase. It might also have something to do with where you live as well. I remember hearing the phrase, but I remember hearing it used to describe somebody who's like running really quickly, and we would say they're chewing up road. Something that he mentioned that he wished would happen, which would be really cool, would be to get a lot of black linguists together that natively speak African American English and have everybody pick a West African language and learn it and try to discover all of the different links that exist between West African languages and our version of English, and kind of piece together how we stitched some of these links into the version of English that we speak. I think that would be really cool, and you should probably send them a DM if you are interested. I'm choosing not to do that, by the way. I'm on a different, yet still sort of related path. After I learned Spanish, I got kind of curious about our ancestors in the Caribbean and in South America and the effects that they might have had on the language of Spanish. And I also now kind of feel a pull to learn French and try to study some of the effects that our ancestors had on the language of French. And French Creole is definitely something that I would like to learn a bit of. So that's the path that I'm on right now. I'm learning French right now. I'll be learning French all of next year, and I'll be making tons of language learning videos and tips and stuff like that for you guys because you said you wanted to see that sort of content. So that's the path that I'm on, and credit where credit is due, and I'll catch you on the next one. Let's talk about the phrase, I could care less. Grammatically speaking, it means that you could indeed care less about something. So if you want to say that you truly don't care about something, you need to be saying, I couldn't care less. This is a mistake that happens so frequently that our brains automatically associate it with the intended meaning. It's as if we've collectively agreed on a deep mental level that I could care less and I couldn't care less mean the exact same thing, irregardless of the way that the sentence is structured. Yes, I did use irregardless on purpose because regardless and irregardless mean the exact same thing. It's basically an OG double negative that is acceptable in mainstream American English. That's the thing about languages. Something that you think is incorrect has indeed had a history of being correct for a long time, and something that is indeed incorrect becomes correct. Languages are incredibly resilient, even when they're dead. Alright, so you're saying the plural of the word mouse is mice, and there's no grammatically correct situation in which you would use the word mouses. Yeah, that's what I said. Like, none at all. None. Zero is not possible. I bet you $10 I can come up with a grammatically correct situation to say mouses. Alright, bet. Alright, so if Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse came in here and they had their cousins Morty and Ferdy and Millie and Melanie along with them, how would they introduce themselves to us? I don't know, like, hi, we're the mouses, we have a reservation. You owe me $10. Now take this to the Lexicist table. It's for Mr. Lexicist.